Today's episode of Opening Scenes is here. Cousin Adrian is back, and we cover a movie that has performance, power, weight, and a whole lot of dust. Yeah. Before we get to the episode, if you're new to the Running It Back channel, please subscribe to it. Everything is up there. The Sunday Night Talk wrapped up this last week with our Super Bowl season finale episode. So that's up there. You can check out that previous episode on the channel. Not to mention, all my installments are up there. My interviews and my stand-up clips as well. The channel has picked up some new subscribers, so thank you to everyone who is now following Running It Back. The channel is growing and new stuff is going up all the time. We've got some shorts up there now of my stand-up, little bits, little clips of jokes, cut down in little short bite-sized pieces. So go check it out if you haven't seen those stand-up clips of me on there already. But right now, Opening Scenes is here. Adrian and I discuss Gangs of New York. Scorsese, DiCaprio, Daniel Day-Lewis, and New York. We talk first impressions, the history, and of course, the categories for the opening scene of Gangs of New York. So much was on our minds. Here on Running It Back, Opening Scenes, this is Gangs of New York. We are here. It is the final installment of Opening Scenes. Cousin Adrian joins me. I am here, and Adrian, for our final installment of Opening Scenes, we are covering, let the audience know,
Gangs of New York.
From 2002, Gangs of New York, Martin Scorsese, Leonardo DiCaprio, Daniel Day-Lewis. We are going to break down the opening scene, but as we do in every episode, we're going to talk the whole movie to get us started as well. I hadn't seen this movie in a really long time. And to be honest, I don't even know if I had seen this movie ever in its entirety from start to finish.
Right.
And it really got me to thinking, this movie specifically, is this the most complicated, simple movie plot ever? Because it is really just a revenge movie at the end of it, but it is such a complicated movie. When did you first see this movie?
I saw it. I didn't see it when it came out. No, I was like maybe 8 years old, 7 years old when it came out. I saw it around like my senior year of high school, I really started to get into like just like classic. Well, what is the new, I forget the era of cinema, but it's like when Scorsese started to make those, like Taxi Driver. So I really started to get into Scorsese. Let's just to sum it up. So I went through his like all of his filmography, and so around 2010 is when I saw it the first time.
I don't know if this movie, like when you think Scorsese, I don't know if you instantly think this movie, because I looked up Scorsese's his resume, and before this movie, he was coming off Casino, which was in 1995. So he had a huge break between movies here. So it's almost like a newer audience was just learning what exactly Scorsese is, because Taxi Driver's in the 70s. And then the Casino, the mobster Scorsese. And then we have Gangs, which is 2002, ushering into Scorsese. So it's really a big, big jump. And then we're catching Leonardo DiCaprio off of Titanic heat.
Right.
And the thinking is like, oh, he's in a Scorsese movie, and then you watch this movie, and this is by and large a Daniel Day-Lewis movie. I think you could make this movie without Leonardo DiCaprio, to be honest. I think you need the name, but this is Daniel Day-Lewis doing monologue after monologue.
Right.
And it got me to thinking of New York as a setting, types of New York movies. I got a few to think of. Tell me what you think of this. Types of New York movies. I have financial, trying to make it movies, a neighborhood movie, crime, and romance. So I'm thinking like financial's like Wall Street, and neighborhood is like Do the Right Thing.
Right.
Crime would be like A Bronx Tale. Even romance, like You've Got Mail, is very much a New York
Yeah.
movie with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. And this movie is totally weird. It's old timey New York. It's gangs. It's weirdly religious. It's Catholics versus Protestants,
Right.
and then it's a religious, creepy villain movie. So, where do you stand on New York as the setting of this movie?
Right. So I mean, it's technically not even New York at the time of the movie. I think it's like after the draft strike at the end of the movie that it finally like everyone settles down and they like get rid of like you know how they have like different like municipal police versus metropolitan police and like different fire brigades that are fighting each other. I think that's like when they had to like settle all those conflicts. That's when it actually became united as a city. So we're the movie is very much so like pre New York, if that makes
Hmm.
any sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's one of those movies where you watch it, and I felt like I could be watching a play. Like the setting of it, the cinematography, the feel of the movie is almost its own character. Because I don't know if
Right.
I've watched a movie before where I felt so dirty. Like there's so much
Grime,
dust, mud, grime. Not
cum.
to mention, they are wearing the most uncomfortable looking clothes I think I've ever seen. It's so many vests and pants and hats.
Right.
Like this is the worst clothing for this setting. Like every day you must get home and just like shake off your pants
Yeah.
and a bunch
Unless
of
you're
dust
yeah.
comes out.
But it's cool because like a huge part of that movie too is like costume and wardrobe. Because it also like Daniel Day Lewis is dressed to the nines. He's got the fancy top hat, but then you have like just people in this like beggars in literal rags. So it's just like that movie top to bottom. It's just a top end production, set
Yeah.
design, costume. Just that's why it took 30 years to get made. I mean, lots of research went into the movie.
Yeah, and I'm reading about the movie, and it's based off of the book from 1927, also by the same title. Bill the Butcher, who Daniel Day Lewis plays, is a real person, although he wasn't a murderer like he is
Right.
in the movie. However, he was a real person. He was a guy who ran the city and essentially was this gang leader. And then talking about Daniel Day Lewis, this is the most compelling part of the movie. He's one of those characters where it's funny how we've talked about villain so much in all our four installments of opening scenes. Daniel Day Lewis, like, this guy is a corrupt, complicated bad guy from
Uh-huh.
minute one. And yet we're still trying to figure him out the entire movie. And here's Daniel Day Lewis's resume leading up to Gangs of New York. He had My Left Foot, Last of the Mohicans, In the Name of the Father, and then Gangs of New York. So now I'm thinking this was really the first introduction into Daniel Day Lewis to the mainstream because I've heard of
Yeah.
those other movies, but I
Yeah.
can't think of his performance. Maybe Last of the Mohicans, but Gangs of New York, you're like, what the hell is this guy all about? Who is
Right.
this guy? Is he a real person? His hair is
Yeah.
so stringy. So that I
Can't
think
take care
makes the
yeah.
movie. Like, what were your impressions of Daniel Day Lewis previous Gangs of New York? Did you have any?
Um, no, I think that was probably my first introduction. No, you know what? I saw so like I said, I was really into Scorsese and I saw Age of Innocence before I saw Gangs of New York, ironically, which is another Scorsese movie. But no, I saw him in Gangs and then just around like in and around that time I also saw him in There Will Be Blood. So I kind of got
Yeah.
a huge heavy dose of Daniel Day-Lewis in and around the same time. Just to electrify me. Probably the best actor for a generation to be. And I don't think I'm saying anything controversial when I say that. It's like you cannot take your eyes off of him, especially in Gangs.
Yeah, you really can't. Everything from the clothing to the colors. That opening battle scene where he has the hint of blue, that entire gang has the hint of blue
Right.
on all of them. He's taking off the layer, the way he holds the axe, the way the voice pitches up and down, the accent. I could not figure out his accent. I looked it up
Right.
to see like where he got it from. There's not really a lot of information.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, there isn't a lot of information online about this movie. period. Like
Right.
like I couldn't find a making of. I couldn't
Uh-huh.
find a lot of reviews on the
Okay.
movie. It's
Yeah.
weird that it flies under the radar like that.
Well, that's why it took Scorsese had like the inception of making the movie back like in the 70s. That's why it took so long to get made because he had to do like all the anthropological, research, historical research. I think he had like a historian that he would call like to see like how like mobs of people react like in certain situations like back in the late 1800s. So then, I mean, not to say that it wasn't a hard movie to get financed because eventually it got made because, of course, Leonardo DiCaprio coming hot off of Titanic,
Hmm.
very bankable. That's why a huge reason why the movie got made, quite frankly.
Leo, and then the Weinstein angle of it. Harvey
Right.
Weinstein's Miramax company saved the day with like, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll fund you, we'll give you the big funding, and then they went
Yeah.
over budget again. So the stars aligned to make this movie with all those big hitters in
Yeah.
there. You mentioned Leonardo DiCaprio. This is him coming off of Titanic. However, he has 5 movies in between this. Like I'm always fascinated what the star does right after that huge movie, right after Titanic, or what Julia Roberts does right after Pretty Woman, type of thing. What Will Smith does right after Independence Day. It's really weird. I don't know your relationship with Leonardo DiCaprio, but
Love him.
I love him too. But he
Who
has,
doesn't love him?
who
Right.
doesn't love him? I think we're fascinated with him as a person too. He's essentially our generation's Jack Nicholson. He's
Okay.
just
Yeah.
he does his thing. He doesn't care about anything really. Just wants to work with interesting people and do interesting characters. So he does Titanic in 1997. The very next year, The Man in the Iron Mask. I've never seen this movie. I have no idea what it's about. 1998, again, he does a movie called Celebrity. 2000, he does The Beach. 2001, he does Don's Plum. I never heard of this movie when I'm
I've
looking
never
up
heard
his
of
resume.
Don. Yeah, me neither.
Never heard of it. Then he does Gangs of New York, and then interesting enough, that same year, he does Catch Me If You Can, which was a huge mainstream hit. He works with Tom
Yeah.
Hanks in that one.
With
So it was
Spielberg.
almost like was taking victory lap after victory lap after Titanic, and he was like, "Oh, you guys think I can still hit home runs? I'm going
Yeah.
to work with, of course, Scorsese and do Gangs of New York." However, I don't know if this is the best Leo performance. I don't know if this is top 5
Right.
Leo performance. However, the movie is so good that like he almost represents the audience. We're like, oh yeah, we're on Leo's side on this ride.
Uh-huh.
So what do you think about Leo DiCaprio in this movie?
Yeah, I would say a pretty underwhelming performance. Not that he doesn't hurt the movie in any way, but it's not like what do you think? So when I think of Leo, I think of him in Wolf of Wall Street. Yeah, those huge like the later Scorsese movies, The Departed, but The Aviator. I think he was snubbed for an Oscar that year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, he doesn't really carry the movie the way he does in his later Scorsese appearances.
That being said, do you feel there's anyone else who could have pulled this role off? Like, could
I'm
Chris
not.
O'Donnell be in this movie? Could Edward Norton
Uh-huh.
do this part? I
But
still don't think so. I think it has to have that Leo intensity, that scrappy kid intensity. I
yeah,
almost feel like a scene is missing where like we really need to see Leo do his thing. But that being said, this is a Daniel Day movie. We
yeah,
got
it's
everything out
Daniel
of
Day.
this movie we want.
I
So
mean, yeah, in a lot of respects, Leo provided the star power that they needed to get people in the seats.
yeah, you put Leonardo DiCaprio, you put Daniel Day, and you put Scorsese at the bottom of the movie poster. You're like, I'm going to see this. When's it
Hmm.
coming out? I'm going to see what the hell this is about and go from there. And it's funny, like the cast of this movie is pretty jam packed. Liam Neeson is in the opening scene that we're going to talk about. John C. Riley is the cop in it. Cameron Diaz is, I don't know what she's doing in this movie exactly, but this is
Another name.
this is Cameron Diaz like at a pretty hot Cameron Diaz time as well.
Yeah.
So we had her. I'm trying to think if I'm leaving anybody out. A bunch of character actors.
Brendan Gleeson.
Yeah, he was Monk, right? That's his
Right.
character. Yeah,
Brendan
yeah,
Gleeson.
he was in it a bunch. We had the like the mayor and guys were like, yeah, I know these faces, but I
Right.
didn't really know who they are. So stacked field of actors in there, and it's almost a bummer that we lose Liam Neeson in the opening scene because you're like, oh, we don't have him anymore. He's gone. So it's like
Right.
you're kind of off and running really quickly.
Which makes the opening scene so impactful. That's why, why I was like kind of lobbying for this movie. It's like one and done Liam Neeson.
And then this movie is chock full of storyline. That's why I think this movie, like, I watched it a few times and I'm like, okay, I got to keep up with the storyline. And this scene follows into this scene. And then, like, the third time I watch it, I'm like, oh, Leo just wants to get revenge.
Right.
Like, it's an incredibly simple movie, but I'm trying to follow all the details of it. Like the ending with all the riots is classic Scorsese because I don't understand what the hell's going on.
No, it's
I
just like it's
kind
just
of follow, but like I can't follow it. I don't know
it's
what's
just a
going on.
matter that the last scene is just like purely coincidental that like people are, rioting because they don't want to get drafted. Like so they're
Right.
drafting a bunch of Irish immigrants and people revolting, and it just so happens to time up against like where the dead rabbits are gonna fight the Protestants.
And the
Yay,
like
timing.
good timing. And the other thing, like the undertone or the foundation of this whole movie is American history. We're kind of thinking like, oh yeah, there's the draft. Okay, there was this, and this was the building of the country, and oh, they don't like. Is this an immigrant story? Like, there's so many balls in the air going on, and then like that one scene where the guy tries to assassinate um, the butcher,
Butcher.
right? And Leonardo DiCaprio saves him because he wants to be the one to kill him. I'm like, all right, I don't know what's going on anymore.
Yeah.
So somehow like and then you kind of think like, does Daniel Day Lewis know Leonardo DiCaprio wants to get him? Does he not know? He's giving him that speech when he's in the bed draped in the
Right.
American flag. Is this
Right.
a pro-American? I don't know what's going on. This is Scorsese leaves your brain confused the entire movie, which
Yeah.
maybe that's the good part about the movie overall.
Because a lot of people also see that scene with the attempted assassination as like, oh, maybe Leo is like, that's his allegiance. But yeah, I mean, I
Right.
think the right answer is that he wants to kill him.
It I kind of like came up with this question halfway through the movie on the third rewatch and like the 14th YouTube clip rewatch. Does Bill the Butcher know that Amsterdam Leonardo DiCaprio's character wants to kill him? And when does he realize that? Was it at that play or was it
Yeah.
before then?
Doesn't I think his doesn't one of the henchmen Johnny also reveal to Bill the
Right. His
Butcher?
friend kind of like tips it off.
So yeah, he
That's
tips him off. Yeah,
Do you
and
think
I
that's
think
when Bill the Butcher realized it or do you think he knew
well,
before?
well, I think yeah, well, 100% he would know that that's the priest's son, and then I think when he's doing that stage thing with the Cameron Diaz with the knives, I think that's like when he's trying to uh what's the word
He's almost
not
trying to draw
entice.
him out
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
or he's because he does draw him out in that scene. Right, right. Because Leonardo DiCaprio saves him at the play, but then at the stage scene with the
yeah,
knives, that's when he calls him out in front of the crowd,
yeah, exactly, yeah.
and then he headbutts him about 47 times.
Sometime in between that too, Monk also goes up to Leo like, "You're a pretty good actor." Like, it's just like he's like, "What?" He's like, "I know who you are. I know you're the priest's son or some bullshit."
Right, there was
Because he
that
gives him the
too.
knife. He gives him the knife that he saved.
Right, right. Gives him the knife. There was that one scene where Amsterdam starts like palling around with Daniel Day's crew, and then Monk kind of lifts up his hat. He's like, "Just want to look
Just
at your face."
yeah, yeah. That scene is so. It's just like that is such a like really aggro way to just want to see your face is all.
Right. It kind of like it makes me think like, what would it be like to live in that time where it was like largely lawless in a new,
Right?
in a new country?
Yeah.
Gangs are forming all the time. You have to fend for yourself. Money I don't know how anyone gets money. It's just like all things are on the table. You want to fight in the street? You fight in the street with axes. You want to live in some caves? Live in a cave. It is
Yeah.
fucking crazy. And Scorsese does a good job, even though I will say like it looks like a play because it looks like a set. Like it's almost like it doesn't look real. The city doesn't look real. However, you're
Right.
like, I'm down with this city. Kind of like when you go to Disneyland, you're like, this is all fake, but god damn it, it looks good. I like it.
Right.
I like it.
You
You
want to
know,
buy into it? Yeah, exactly.
you buy in, you really buy in, and the colors are so hyper realized. It's like you're watching an oil painting. This entire
Hmm.
movie, the clothing, the setting, the scenes, like the nighttime scenes with the fire when the fireworks go off at the end. You're like, are those real fireworks? Is this really
Right.
happening? So I
Yeah.
by the character of this movie is the setting. Like there almost would be
Yeah.
like the setting is its own character.
And then I was listening to an interview with Scorsese. I think it was like Charlie Rose or some bullshit. I think it was Charlie Rose, where he described the movie as faction, so facts and fiction. So like there are a lot of like real characters that did exist, like historical characters, like what's his name? The dude with the parakeets. I forget his name.
Oh right,
Uh,
there was that guy
the
too.
corrupt guy. So that's a
Yeah.
real character in history. So to a certain extent, so is Bill the Butcher. Just he wasn't alive at the time of the movie, so like he's just more of like a hyper realized character.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, they blend in like a lot of the anthropology like is kind of embellished. So just to make it's hard to blend all those elements and come out with like a really cohesive movie. So you have to embellish here and there.
Yeah, it's like whenever you do a historical movie, it's really hard to keep to the exact factual stuff of it. I was thinking about this when I was like researching the movie JFK, the Oliver Stone movie. He's doing a movie on this historical event. However, for
Right.
the movie, like he full on adds characters into his movie
Yeah.
that did not exist in history. And I'm thinking that with like some of these movies like Scorsese with the Bill the Butcher scenes and the embellishment there, like it's almost like we need like a little footnote at the end of these movies and say like, okay, this guy didn't exist, but he did kind of exist. This guy wasn't a
Yeah.
murderer. I just like just so we know for historical facts of like what actually happened here. Because the based on the true story really is just where that ends. You just like based on a true
Exactly.
story and then go wherever you want with it, directors and stuff, which
Right.
I'm fine with. But now I feel like I have to do homework after a lot of these historical movies.
Yeah. But I
Any
mean, a true story, let's face it, is not going to be compelling cinema. I mean,
Right. It's almost
you
like we
have to.
got, yeah, the only thing true is almost if someone documented it in real time with a camera and audio. Otherwise, it's open to scrutiny. And with all the documentaries we have these days, it's like that's entirely possible.
Right.
I'm watching the golf one on Netflix right now. And it's like everybody's mic'd up. There's cameras everywhere. And it's like, oh yeah, we don't miss a thing. This is great. Like we will have a historical record of this.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to like art, like this movie, it's like no holds barred. Go
Yeah.
nuts. Create a character,
Uh huh.
make some caves in New York,
Yeah.
go for it. The other detail about it's almost about any Scorsese movie is violence on screen. And we get it from almost minute one with that first battle. I don't know if these are the best action scenes I've ever seen in a movie, but they're still pretty brutal. That first scene, like they've got axes, but there's not a lot of blood. There's a couple close-ups of chopped up limbs and stuff, but it's artistic. I would say the most violent scene is that headbutting scene where Bill
Yeah.
Butcher is headbutting Amsterdam on the table. That one is the most excruciating. Where do you stand on the violence in this movie? Do you like it? Is it crazy? Do you just expect it in a
Yeah.
Scorsese movie?
I mean, the funny thing is, like that first battle is there are a lot of limbs that are thrown around, but you don't see a lot of it. Like it's implied violence. The
Yeah.
And then I just noted like there was a lot of scenes like where you don't really see people like actually being so like this scene with with Monk. You know, the Irish guy with the club. Yeah,
Right.
you don't like he's brutally murdered, but you don't see like any of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a lot of. So I think that's like a really clever device just to imply violence because I mean a lot of the violence that is talked about is never shown in the movie. But yeah, the first scene, like I guess, is probably the most violent.
You think so? The first scene?
Yeah, but even the girl that's buying the ear, you don't see the ear. Like it's just all
Right.
you know.
Yeah, we see her go, ah, and she
Yeah.
has an ear, like a clearly fake prosthetic ear.
But it's a clever way of like you know sort of yeah creating
It's
an
almost like
atmosphere of violence.
Scorsese kind of uses violence as a jump scare. Like you think you're going to see some violence and you don't see too much. And then you
Hmm.
don't think you're going to see violence and then you see brutal headbutting.
Right.
Like another example, like in that movie, The Departed, like all the violence happens in the last 4 minutes of that movie, and
Yeah.
then it's just like an overload of blood and shooting and stuff. And you're like, what the? Oh shit!
Yeah.
Movie
Like that movie's really violent.
that
Like
movie's really violent, and then like it goes up a notch at the end. Whereas this movie just sort of gives you a little sampling of violence, like almost every 17 minutes
hmm.
in the movie. It starts with some violence, and then we got build up, and then we got like the monk scene, and then we got the riots at the end.
But I
So,
think the way that he did it too is like where it's implied violence is because I think violence on that scale, like in the especially in the first opening scene, kind of just takes you out of it. It's just like, oh, so it's just gonna be like sort of just like but like violence like as a almost like a currency that
mhm,
we just all consume. So you don't
yeah,
want to take anything away from the main story with the overwhelming amount of violence that's implied in the movie.
yeah. I almost feel like Scorsese or the writer of the film like really bit off a lot. Like there was a lot to chew in this movie. I feel like we could have got rid of some things in this movie. This is just there's so much going on. Like the Cameron Diaz character, I don't feel like the monk character like ever fully makes full circle. Like
Right. Yeah,
in the
yeah.
movie, I feel like, oh, all right, okay, he's going to be a part of this movie, and he gets killed.
Yeah.
Or the beginning, even the beginning, where a monk is at the door and he's like, how about a priest?
Right.
And he's like, whose side are you on? He's like, whatever side that pays me. I'm like, so you're a mercenary? So he
Yeah.
joins them, and then we
Exactly.
don't see him for another 30 minutes
Yeah.
in the movie. So that part is a little confusing to me as well. The friend, the Amsterdam's friend, I don't
Hmm.
know if he was with him or against him because he tips off Bill the Butcher that he was Priest Fowler's son.
Yeah.
That was another one. Tricky. It's a tricky movie to keep tabs on.
There's also, I mean, like, of course, like at the heart of the movie, it's a revenge story,
Yeah.
but like in some respects, too, it's a father-son story. So, like, of course, Leo, when the child actor that plays Leo, and Liam Neeson, and then like, and for throughout most of the movie, it's Leonardo and Daniel Day Lewis. So I think even Johnny Boy, or I think it's just Johnny, he probably he's thirsting for that sort of father love from Daniel Day Lewis's character. So I think
Mhm.
that's where a lot of like that jealousy comes from. Well, I think it's obviously where it comes from, but yeah, I think I don't think it's necessarily that he's plotting against Amsterdam. I just think that yeah, it's just sheer jealousy.
Yeah, and I think he's Scorsese's trying to paint a picture of the time that just how desperate it was. If there's an overlord running the city and you pay him to keep the peace and not get murdered, like you just do it. And that's
Hmm.
just the way it is. Like he ruled everything. It's a gang movie. It's a mafia movie. It's like
Yeah,
Scorsese was like, how can I put the mafia in 1927? It's like, oh,
yeah,
I'll do this way. And then just before we dive into Daniel Day, every scene he's in, you're like, oh shit. You're like, what's gonna happen? Like he is so compelling in every single scene. You stare at his face, like, why is his hair like that? The eyeball, the glass eyeball. He's chopping up meat and everything. Everything is so menacing about that guy. I love the scene where he's walking with Amsterdam and he's essentially explaining how he runs the city. He's like, everybody pays, everybody lives. Somebody was over here. I take a tabs over here. You're just like, okay, all right, got it. Like a little bit of setup so we know what's going on there.
I was raised in a very similar establishment myself. Now everything you see belongs to me, to one degree or another. The beggars and newsboys and quick thieves here in paradise, sailor dives and gym mills and blind tigers on the waterfront, the anglers and the muses, the she-he's and the chinks. Everybody owes, everybody pays, because that's how you stand up against the rising of the tide.
So, okay, this jumps out at me. We were talking villains. The first movie we did was The Dark Knight, and we were talking about Heath Ledger's Joker. Then we did Mean Girls with, and we had, why am I forgetting her name? Who was the mean girl in Mean Girls?
Rachel McAdams?
Yes. What was her character's name?
I have no idea.
I forgot too. She was the villain. Then the last movie we did was the Mission Impossible. We had Simon the Anarchist was the villain. And then Daniel Day is now Bill the Butcher, the villain. I'm thinking like this, the villain has to be so compelling for it to be a good movie. Like so many movies fall apart because you don't really believe the villain can pull this off. This movie, I thought Daniel Day was going to burn the whole city down multiple times in the movie. So when you watch Daniel Day-Lewis, this performance, how would you describe it?
You see, I really don't have that same sort of sentiment that you do. I think that he there's a lot of humanity in his character, which I think made him even more compelling to me.
Yeah.
Because so just for example, like the first scene, like he kills Liam Neeson's character, and he was like, so what do we do with the boy? He's just like, let's see that he gets a good education.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, so he's not like, I'll just fucking like kill this kid, like, you know. And then like in the movie, like throughout the movie, he gives like a lot of like need to like poor people, and I just don't like. He's more of a great character than I think meets the eye.
It just
Glass eye. Sorry.
It's just confusing because you're right. He has that humanity. He has the shrine to Priest Valor, the guy he killed, because he puts his picture up by the candle. He has that little party on the anniversary of the year that he's killed Priest Valor. Mm. He's strange. He's just a strange character that you just can't figure out, like, whose side is this guy on?
Right.
There's that scene on the docks where he's telling the mayor why they shouldn't let immigrants in. He's like, they got to let natives in, like me. Guy,
go back to your... Yeah, no, sorry.
You're tearing down this country. He's a strange character. And in the ending scene, which, where Amsterdam finally kills him, like, he's kind of like, well, boy, I guess I'm dead now. I'm glad I died a true American, right. You know? And it's almost a letdown that's how he gets killed, because it's not the most epic final battle scene. It just sort of ends. So it just keeps me guessing that if I were to describe this character, I would say Bill the Butcher is just menacing. Yeah. He's so menacing. Like, what are you talking about? Who are you for? Will you kill anybody at the drop of a hat, or do you have some humanity? And I guess any great story character, like, we never figure it out. We have no idea. You know?
And from what I remember, the real Bill the Butcher, he didn't die. So his death, I think he died to the hands of like an Irishman who he hated. He hates, the Irish. But I think I forget how exactly, in some sort of scuffle, and like according to the data, or not the data, but like word of mouth, I guess, that those were his last words. He was like, "At least I died a true American." So that's interesting.
What would Bill Butcher be today? He would probably be super duper right wingy. What would Bill the Butcher's version of in 2023 be, do you think?
Yeah, he definitely
maybe he would own a lot of property. Maybe he would own commercial real estate, and he would just jack up the rent every 12 months.
He definitely have some sort of meat operation on the side, maybe, butcher's box, something like that. He'd definitely be upset with all the, South American immigrants that had been crossing in the past couple of months.
He'd have a lot of thoughts on immigration. It's just funny. We go from 1927 to 2023. We're still bitching and moaning about immigration. We're never going to figure this out.
right?
It's going to be a point of contention for the next 1,000 years. We can't figure it out.
I was born in this country. Yeah.
I do like how he refers to himself as a native. I'm like 1927.
Yeah.
How native could you have been? Like, what was he, first generation American? Like, I didn't quite figure out the logic in what he was determined as natives, other than he just didn't like any new people coming in. Maybe that was it. He's like, well, I'm here, and then that'll wrap it up. You Irish guys go home.
That's how it is. I mean, that's how, especially here in El Paso, Texas, like there's a lot of racism towards Mexicans crossing over from Mexican Americans. Like you're like one generation removed. Calm the fuck down, all right? It's like, really, you're gonna choose this battle?
It's an interesting observation. Like some of the most racism occurs by that very own race.
Yeah, it's like,
I've said it many times. Many people are surprised that when they find out I am Mexican, and you know who's the most surprised by that? Other Mexicans.
Yeah.
Be like, what's your mom's last name? Oh, Garcia. Oh, your dad? Ramirez. Yeah. So you're 100% Mexican? Yeah.
Yeah.
Nah, you're not. I'll never convince them.
It's like, all right, don't believe me.
I'll never win. I can never win this battle, Adrian.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start a butcher shop. One more thing on Bill the Butcher, Daniel Day-Lewis's character. I'm gonna put you on the spot here. What's your favorite line by Bill the Butcher in this movie? Because I have mine. I'm just gonna read it to you. By the way, I had like 18. I had to narrow it down. I love his opening line when they're going to have that battle in the snow.
Yeah.
And he looks at the Dead Rabbits gang and he goes, is this priest? The Pope's new army? A few crusty bitches and a handful of ragtags?
Yeah.
Is this it, priest? The Pope's new army? A few crusty bitches and a handful of ragtags?
It's so great. It sets it up and you're like, holy shit, they're going to do a battle.
Yeah. I would have loved to heard that.
Army.
I would have loved to heard, like, I imagine there's some sort of table reading, and just like the first time he read that line, everyone must have, the hairs on everyone's neck must have just stood up like, oh fuck,
right,
I think
like,
we got our guy.
Like, oh, like everybody at the table's like, oh shit, all right, it's gonna be this kind of movie. All right, Daniel Day. The Pope's new army. What monologue, what line do you like the most from Bill the Butcher?
I don't know it word for word, but I really like it because I just found out recently that it was improvised by him. I don't think the line itself was improvised, but he added something to it. So it's when he's sitting down with John C. Reilly's character. I think it's like Officer Mulroney or something. You know which guy I'm talking about, the police officer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's when Leo puts up the dead rabbit, like kind of like reviving the dead rabbit movement or whatever, and he comes to John C. Reilly's, I guess, whatever precinct or whatever, and he's like, he brings the dead rabbit. He's like, I want you to find this man. When he started, you know, when he's crying, you're like, who killed this rabbit? It's just like, oh, it's like, that's so fucking.
That's right. I forgot he fake
yeah.
cries.
None of your little minions. I want you to go out there, and I want you to punish the person who's responsible for murdering this poor little rabbit.
Yeah, so he improvised like that crying, and like that's just like fucking the shit. Yeah, so that's my answer.
What was the scene where I think he's bitching out Leo or something, and then he goes, feel free to help yourself to some meat on the way out.
Yeah.
Just total like Scorsese was like, we need a mobster line in this movie.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
Yeah, like don't forget the cannolis type of thing. Like we need
right.
one of those in this movie. Don't forget to help yourself to some meat on the way out.
Help yourself to some decent meat on the way out.
Yeah, there's a lot of elements of like Scorsese Italian mafia movies kind of lays throughout the movie. Like that's a good one. There's a good scene. I think it's actually that exact scene that I was talking about right now when he's with the dead rabbit and he's telling Mulroney is like, "You think I give a fuck about your moral conundrum?" And then like John C. Riley is like so paranoid, and then there's a bunch of like Bill's henchmen in the back, and he's just kind of like the look behind like that you see in so many like gangster movies. So there's a lot of like nods to a bunch of like Goodfellas, Casino, Mean Streets, all that shit.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I think overall, I think he pulls it off. Like, let me have a mobster movie in old timey New York. I think he pulled it off. It's so compelling. And then one more thought before we go to the opening scene. We talk about like all the Daniel Day-Lewis line readings, like where he builds his voice up to like a yell, like where he's like, let it be known that I will strike down. And then he goes crazy. But then to flip it, on the other side, that scene where he goes to see Monk, he has no dialogue. When he's standing at the doorstep, he's just standing there still. And Monk
like
is like,
Mike Myers.
yeah, it's like like a monster. And Monk is like, if you want to discuss this like men, then we'll have a dialogue. He doesn't say a word. He just comes and throws an axe in his fucking back.
Yeah.
And then,
there you go. There's a notch for you.
Yeah. You're just like, oh my God, this guy is I already knew he was a monster, but he is more of a monster. It's unbelievable.
Election day.
It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Get out there and vote.
I love it. I love it every time. I'm glad it's a movie. Like, it's almost like I'm glad this guy doesn't exist in real life, because this guy's horrendous. He's fucking crazy. This guy with his glass eye. All right, let's talk opening scene. I have for my opening scene from when the movie starts to when Monk kicks the door and you see the white snow. It is 4 minutes, 20 seconds. It is a battle march. It is musical. You see the caves. Oddly, we have this odd Leonardo DiCaprio narration for 2 lines that doesn't make any sense. And then it ends with Liam Neeson asking Monk if he's down for the battle. And then he kicks the door open, and it goes from dark to harsh white in the snow. So I have that for my opening scene. Would you say that's the opening scene, or do you include the battle?
I include the battle. Yeah.
You went battle too.
I did. The battle isn't much longer. I think it's like another 3 minutes. Yeah. Because, I like to, so there's a whole sequence. My idea of an opening scene is like when the sequence of events, like there's a transition to either a different time or a different setting or a different place. So like there's that battle, and then there's a transition to, a future New York. Not that much future. I think it's like 20 years. Right when Amsterdam gets off the boat from New Haven or whatever.
And then also Scorsese style, no credits. It just starts. And then where the audience is left to try and figure out like who's what's going on in this short period of time, because Liam Neeson starts with the blood stays on the blade line. And you're like, what's that mean? Like I'm already confused. I'm like, what? Why did he say that? Okay, that's his son. And he's like, Saint Michael cast Satan out of heaven. Say it! And he makes his son say it.
All right. What did he do? You cast Satan out of paradise.
That's right. Wait. Who did? Saint Michael. It's
Saint Michael.
Saint Michael.
Who is it?
Saint Michael.
And what did he do?
He cast Satan out of paradise.
It's so weird. And then he's walking, and they're just sort of picking up characters along the way. And then they have that, like, I don't know if like there's a more annoying sound than a scratchy flute that's playing through the whole thing. You're just like, oh, this is annoying. You're like, these are caves. And they kick open the door and you see snow. So you're like, oh, we're in for a battle. I don't know who, I don't know what, I don't know who they're fighting, but this is going to be a battle. So I had that as my opening scene. You went into that first battle where we see the natives enter the scene and then Bill the Butcher gives his "Is this the Pope's new army?" speech.
Yeah.
So it sets us up for a definitely yeah, I watched that opening scene and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what's gonna happen here? That's my reaction when I watch the opening scene.
I think it's really effective when a lot of, or at least a majority of like their principal characters are introduced. Just even
Right?
if it's
Yeah, we see John C. Reilly. You're like, oh shit, John C. Reilly's in this movie.
yeah, right. It's funny, and then I think I saw Step Bros before I even saw Gangs in New York, so it was kind of like, oh shit, John C. Reilly in a fucking drama. Think I may be, don't quote me on. I forget what year Step Brothers came out. I think it came out 2010, around the time I saw Gangs in New York for the first time.
Oh, right. So like we all had some John C. Reilly history in us. If you saw it late, you saw that he was in Magnolia, Step Brothers, or maybe even Talladega Nights. If you saw it that late, you're like, whoa,
Oh
now
yeah,
now he's in this movie. Like, what's going on here?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then yeah, I later discovered that he was more of like a serious actor before he did all this, this Will Ferrell,
Right.
co-starring bullshit.
Right. All right. So let's do the categories. It's time for our famous opening scenes categories. I have a lot written down for these. Our first category is what if? What if they made a whole movie out of this scene? And my thought is, if you made a whole movie out of this scene, I say you just make a musical. It looks so theatrical and like there's so many characters in it. It's almost a dance they're doing to the door. I'm like, this is a musical. Make it a musical. I'm ready for someone to bust out in a full-on Broadway show tune. So I went with musical if I made a whole movie out of just this scene.
Huh, I didn't even think of that.
I branched out.
It's actually kind of a brilliant idea because there's not really any like recorded music. It's all, street performers or just like sheer percussions, wind instruments. So that's actually kind of a cool idea. Yeah, like a lot of the story could be just, done like as a musical.
And then think how awesome it would be for Bill the Butcher to sing his lines.
Right? Right. Is this the Pope's new army?
A few crusty bitches and a handful of ragtags. I do like the line where they're about to like rush each other into battle, and Liam Neeson yells out, "Be ready to receive the one true Lord."
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like, oh my God, these two are gonna fight to the death.
That's hilarious. Someone should do that. Someone should do that.
What do you got for your what if? What if they made a whole movie out of this one scene?
In lieu of revenge story, I guess more of like a ongoing religious war type of movie.
Yeah,
where it's just sent generations and generations that sort of.
Yeah, because it is Protestants against Catholics, but we never really hear why the Protestants hate the Catholics and why the Catholics hate the Protestants. They just hate each other.
Right. I think it has less so to do with religion as it does with like the sort of quote unquote nativism.
Right. Yeah, because you could ask the same question for like gangs today. It's like, hey Crips, what are your actual problems with the Bloods? Hey Bloods, what are your fundamental disagreements with the Crips? Like, we don't know, we hate them, and then that's it. And then that's it. Violence ensues. So
there's this really cool show that only lasted, I think, 2 seasons on HBO called Raised by Wolves, which is a Ridley Scott production, where it's a global battle of religious people, the human beings in general, versus this sort of radical wing of people that are atheists and who have like sort of like an android civilization. So it's like androids versus humans. It's
oh wow,
like that's like what I'm kind of leaning towards.
That is gonna happen. Oh, that would be that's your what if? Yeah, like go into an androids versus humans. Oh, I would go for that.
Almost like that's a really cool idea and it's been done, but I'm saying like no, but like that's like an extreme sort of level of what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Maybe one day, maybe the immigrants will be like the androids. Like they'll be the bots, the robots, and like all us natives will be like, we don't want you here. And then we'll have
Yeah.
a battle. That'll be the new immigrants is the robots we create. Oh, that'd be trippy.
Oh god, but yeah. Like I said,
I'd watch that.
It's been done to Raised by Wolves is pretty much
Yeah.
that, but so don't
Next
steal that
category.
idea.
This was my favorite of the categories. Character check. Who's in the scene and why? All right, I made a list of all the characters in this scene. And remember, I just went to the snow for my opening scene. So I'm going to list you all the characters that I wrote down. I got Kid Leo, Liam Neeson, John C. Reilly, Fingernail Lady, Scraping Knife Guy, Mud in the Face Guy, Guy Stuffs Something into His Hat Guy,
Right.
Priest Who Blesses Everybody as They Go Out Guy, Dancing Black Guy, Shirtless Drummer, the other little kid who runs up and says, "What's the battle?" and Monk. Those are how many people, and I left out a bunch too.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, if you like, it'd be there's like thousands of people like in that opening scene, maybe hundreds of people.
I couldn't figure out Mud on the Face Guy. Like they're walking by and this guy's just
Right.
putting mud on his face.
I think that was just like everyone just has like their little pre-war rituals. I guess so they go. Yeah, the dude with the hat is like, "Oh, is this on fifth right?" Like, so he's like,
What was
stuffing-
he doing? What was he stuffing in the hat? Was like that was a
Yeah.
weapon he was going to use later? I couldn't figure it out.
I can't figure it out either. I guess it's like so that the hat fits a little better. I have no idea.
I couldn't figure that out, but I do love a getting ready for battle scene. But
Yeah.
more specifically, I love a collect your weapons scene. Where like in the Predator, where they all start loading their guns and like doing the and they start like hanging their grenades. And this
Yeah.
movie kind of has like a little bit of that, where they're getting their weapons ready, or sharpening the knives. John C. Reilly is doing something with his teeth. He's biting something. I don't know what he was doing.
I think he was like tying something. Yeah.
Tying a knot with sounds like what's that weapon? I didn't know what that is. I loved it. I loved it. So I loved all the characters getting their weapons ready. Who do you have for character check? What jumped out at you? What did you think?
Yeah. So John C. Reilly, Brendan Gleeson, McGloin, who's like that little Irish guy that eventually crosses over to Daniel Day-Lewis's little faction.
Mhm.
The Irish guy is like, "Don't worry, he's what does he say the first time that he's like, oh, don't worry about him. He's a recovering Irishman or some bullshit."
Yeah,
Like, so-
yeah, he's something like that. There's a few little lines in it.
Oh no, I was like, don't worry about him. He used to be an Irishman. Like, so I guess he's like a reformed. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
So that little short guy, I think even the little kid that goes up to little Leo when he was like, "Who are you with? What do you think, Dead Rabbit?" I think that's Johnny, the Johnny character.
Right, that was his friend that's later on in the movie.
Yeah, the one that betrays him later in the movie.
Yeah, and it's like it's perfect usage of little kids to explain what exactly is going on to the audience, because they can ask the dumb questions that we're asking in our head,
Yeah,
but we're too
exactly.
embarrassed to ask. Like, what's the battle? Dead rabbits versus the natives. Who are you with? And you're like, oh yeah, good question. Who is this gang?
Yeah.
So perfect usage. The narration by Leo in the beginning, totally unnecessary, but the little kid question at the beginning, back to exposition, is perfectly needed, and I would say they nail it. It's like perfect. 2 questions, moving on.
Yeah, because Leo says something really that just was like kind of.
I have it right here. The Leonardo DiCaprio narration is as Priest Valor, Liam Neeson. It opens with his eyeballs, and he's shaving, and in the Leonardo adult narration is, some of it I half remember, and the rest I took from dreams.
Some of it I half remember, and the rest I took from dreams.
I don't know what that means. I have no idea why that's necessary.
Yeah.
Why can't we cut that out, Scorsese? Not necessary. Other than you hear Leonardo DiCaprio's voice, and maybe that.
I think that's just used as a way so that the audience knows that little kid is later to become Leonardo DiCaprio. Just so
I
that
guess
we know
so,
that's
right?
little Leo. Yeah.
I guess so. Maybe that works. And then like there's no narration the rest of the movie. I don't think there was any more Leonardo DiCaprio narration. So it's almost like
Yeah.
Leo's not in this scene, but how can we wedge him into it somehow? Well, we'll give him a narration that he remembers shit from his dreams.
Yeah.
Next category, surprises. I have only one, and I'm not even sure if this is factually true, but I was surprised by the caves. Are there really caves under New York or in a doorway? Are there full-on catacombs under New York at the time?
From what I remember, again, I listened to a Scorsese. He did a commentary on the DVD. Yeah, there were like sort of catacombs like that
Was
back
there
like
really?
in
Huh.
the late 1800s. Yeah, yeah. So that's historically accurate for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I had caves as my surprise. There's this full-on underground, and then they go outside to the city. What did you have for your surprises?
So mine is Bill the Butcher's like so after all this sort of brutal warfare, then like the sort of uh tenderness that he treats little Amsterdam with caught me.
Oh,
So
that's good.
I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, what happened to like this brutal fucking warmonger that we just saw like 10 seconds ago? So I was like thrown into a little bit of a tailspin. I was like, wait, is this guy a real piece of shit? And we find out throughout the movie, like, it's a little gray. He's not that bad of a person. Like,
Right.
yeah, he's racist. Like he's racist, but then like he gives back to like poor people. So there's a massive gray area with Bill the Butcher.
Yeah.
He is the villain of the movie. I mean, no doubt, but like he is not as evil as at least a lot of people think he is.
Yeah, he had these warped ideals, you could
Yeah,
say, where he
exactly.
was like pro America, but like in a very skewed, warped way, where he was the boss, nobody can come in, everybody had to pay him. But he recognized that Priest Valor, the Liam Neeson character, was like a worthy adversary.
Right.
But he
That's
killed him.
another scene too. Yeah.
But he killed him because he yells out like, "Look who's under my knife!" And then he has like the party for him and the picture on the wall. It's just confusing character, and just back to like the villain is the best part of this movie.
Right.
So
But
that's a
yeah,
good surprise, realizing
but
like he has this weird humanity.
and then also like if you really have like a lot of hatred towards someone, like if you kill them like in like on a battlefield, I met again like I don't really have a violent streak. I wouldn't really know that side of myself, but I would imagine like if I hated someone, like I'd kill them like in the most gruesome way possible, and he
Yeah.
kills them in a pretty like humane, tender way.
Right. Yeah, it's very
possible
strange
to
that
kill
he's so
someone in a tender way.
brutal. Yeah.
Kills
That's-
them, and then he kind of then it's funny like it's also kind of like he doesn't even really he bamboozles them on the battlefield too. Like he throws someone, and that's why he kind of kills him in a cheap way.
Yeah, the battle scenes are like weirdly, at least those two, the one at the end and the beginning one, are oddly like unsatisfying as far as like the final kill. Because the final one, when Amsterdam is fighting Bill the Butcher, like something blows up like in the background and it like surprises them, and then he
They're
stabs
both
them.
like, yeah,
It's not like your normal fight scene.
yeah.
It kind of leaves you like at the tip of the mountain, and you're like, you never fall over the other side of it. So that's a good surprise. The Bill the Butcher weird humanity that he has in that opening scene.
Yeah.
Next category. This one's called Money Shot. Best part of the scene. I dug deep. I went with two nominees. I went with the door kicking, because the music is playing, it's dark, there's fire, and then Monk kicks the door open and the music cuts and you see snow. And like, it's cold. Like a lot of times in movies, cold doesn't translate on the screen. Like you see cold and you're like, why don't they just put on a jacket? It's no big deal. But like you get the bitterness of that cold. And then I had, for the best part of the scene, just the follow tracking where Liam Neeson's walking and the gang is growing, and you're like kind of going with them from the front of it. I love the tracking shot of that. And then all of a sudden he's carrying the cross with him.
Yeah.
He gives little Leo the communion, and they're moving. It's moving all the time. So you get this sense of urgency, like we're going to something. Where are we going? I don't know. Where are we going? So I went with the door kicking and the follow tracking as my best part of the scene, money shot.
Well, it's you're gonna think I'm bullshitting, but yeah, that's my favorite part of the scene too, is like the tracking, and yeah, like just like all the characters that are gonna be relevant throughout the movie. So like a movie like Gangs of New York is hard to get made because there's not an audience for that type of movie. You know, there's not a lot of people that are into, you know, late 1800s New York City, like where it's like, you know, it's a melting pot of, you know, black people, Chinese people. So I think it was like crucial that Scorsese just hook everyone in those first couple minutes, you know. And I thought that was like the music, the tracking, the fact that Liam Neeson is the fucking priest, like all that it contributes to. For me, at least, I was like eyes glued to the screen.
Right. It hooks you very, very quickly, regardless of the weird Leo narration.
Right.
Next category is called details. This is the one that's most open to the interpretation. I had the music, because even though like we have the annoying flute and the battle drum, like there's some like orchestra music at the bed of it as well. I had the catacombs as being kind of trippy and interesting.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, like you feel like you're in a tight space, and then it zooms out and shows these big catacombs, and you're like, I don't know exactly where I am. And then that leads into the audience piecing together what exactly they're looking at from the beginning. Like there's nothing obvious about the opening scene. You're like, where are they? Who is this?
Yeah.
They're going to go fight. So you're instantly locked in trying to figure it out. So I had my details, music, catacombs, and then the audience from the beginning trying to figure out what they're watching exactly. What did you have for your details?
Well, who's the villain in this movie? And then later, you know, minutes later, Daniel Day-Lewis.
Right.
So
that's true. They set it up that they're going to go battle the devil, essentially, like from the first line.
And then, you know, the razor, the blood stays on the way. That's a sort of like an enigmatic sort of thing to say to a 5-year-old. That's, you know, probably, so you don't say that to someone not thinking you're probably going to die, like,
right,
minutes later. So those two things.
Yeah, those are good. Next category. What type of scene is this? I kind of had two of them because I threw in montage because we had all the characters get their little second on screen getting their weapons ready. And then I also threw in that this is a battle walk. Like every good action movie or fight movie, like you got to have the build up to the fight.
Right.
So I gave it a montage / battle walk type of opening scene.
Right.
No credits, just
Full
right
opening.
into it. And it goes tight on Liam Neeson's eyeballs to start. And then we're off and running. What do you think for your type of opening scene?
Well, you know, I'm the asshole that's so like clearly I'm Enter the Villain, so. But, you know, we differ on where the opening scene ends, so.
Right. So you went Enter the Villain. And I think, I'm trying to think where it starts because it's that wide shot of the town and the snow. And then like you just see like a little trickle of a person. And then it shows the 2 feet of Bill the Butcher. And you're like, who's this guy? Like, who's this Darth Vader guy?
Yeah, very like almost like spaghetti western.
Yeah. The other thing like that's good, like with the snow scene, like you put blood on snow, like it looks gross when blood hits white snow. I almost feel like Scorsese could have went harder.
Oh yeah, that's why
that.
I'm saying like that opening scene they really held back like a great deal.
Yeah, it's like kind of like someone else should have tackled the battle scenes in this movie because they could have been 5% more awesome.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of scenes where Bill the Butcher's swinging that big axe, and we don't get like the gratuitous blood splatter. Like he's just essentially punching people with the axe. you know, and then we have like a few like inserts of like blood everywhere. The fingernail lady
Yeah.
takes an ear. So I'm with you. It's kind of like you're scared of the guy from
yeah.
the start. But I want to see some crazy shit, some John Wick crazy stuff.
I wonder, now that you mention it, I wonder if they held back. Maybe they went back to the editing room and maybe cut out some stuff because the movie was supposed to be released like I think a week or two after 9/11. So
Oh
maybe
yeah,
they delayed it and they're like maybe people, don't want to see that that degree of violence
that
on
could have
screen yet.
been. Yeah,
Um, but from what I heard or from what I read, like I think they just delayed it because people weren't like really ready to do shit like going to see. It just would have hurt the box office like as
yeah,
well.
it would have been weird, and it's a weird America tie-in with this movie too.
Yeah,
It's a strange one. You just got to sit in and just go for the ride
I even think.
with this
Well, I
movie.
don't even think the. I think the. No, I don't think the towers are in the last
The
frame of the
last, you're
movie too.
right. Yeah, the towers are in, so it's
Yeah, that would
but
have
it
been too
might have came
much.
out. But you're right. It might have. What year did this? I forgot.
2001
2002. So yeah,
or
it would have been
2002.
right after. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would have had that impact at the end of the movie where the two towers are up there, and that was fresh in our minds at that point. It's still weird to me when you see the twin towers in movies. Like Home Alone 2 is one.
Yeah.
Oh shit! Like I think we'll always say
Spider-Man.
that.
Yeah. Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man.
Right.
I think maybe even the second one. No,
Mm-hmm.
just the first one. In fact, I saw a poster of the original Spider-Man sell for like a boatload of money because it was one of the very few prints where the reflection of the twin towers are in his like eyes,
Yeah.
and which was pulled right after 9/11. But
Oh, I see.
just a little quick
So,
9/11 talk for everyone.
so quick hot 9/11 talk. Last category, scene winner. You know who I had winning the scene? I have editing as my scene winner. I just love how it like gets the roller coaster going so quick. The weird music, the
Yeah.
weapons, the guy stuffing things in his hat,
Yeah.
and then the quick cut to no music and then into the snow. So I went with editing for my scene winner.
Yeah, and his editor, I think it's Thelma Schoonmaker, if I'm not mistaken. I think she's done every one of his movies. Like they've been career-long collaborators.
Yeah, they've worked together for multiple movies, right?
Yeah, I think 90% of his movies, and that's like one of my favorite part of a lot of Scorsese movies is like the sort of psychology that he sort of develops just in sheer editing.
Mm-hmm.
The sort of paranoia, certain themes that he's wrangling in a lot of his movies is a lot of that is done like through editing. But yeah, the editing
I
is
liked
really
it.
good in all of his movies. What's the category again? I'm sorry. Went on a little bit of editing.
I think it was 9/11. No.
Oh shit! Sorry.
Scene winner. Who do you have
Scene
for your
winner.
scene winner?
It's got to be Daniel.
Yeah, it's you're like
mean,
you don't want to pick the obvious one, but you have
Yeah.
to. You're
I'm not
just
gonna be an
like,
asshole and be like, oh, I think the costume design. It's Daniel Day-Lewis, all right, guys. Get that through your head.
it's hard not to pick. It's just that was his that year the Bulls won 72 games. It was like he's the best. This is the team. There's no argument. I can't dig any deeper. Daniel Day won the scene. Yeah, I'm with you. Right from the spot where he takes off the top hat and he has a weird skull cap on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, huh, what is this guy? What the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I went with editing. You went with Daniel Day. That was Gangs of New York, 2002, the Martin Scorsese. Would you call it a masterpiece? I think it's close. If I were to give this, if this movie was a football team, I would say it goes 12-4 for the season.
Right.
Couple losses in there that might have been ugly, but I think it went 12-4.
It's like almost like a movie like that is gonna just get better with age. I feel
That's
like
true.
it's almost like
Good point.
it's comparable to the way that Apocalypse Now, again, was born in the 90s, but from what I've read, like Apocalypse Now was like a really turbulent production and was met with like it was a bit of a polarizing movie, especially since it was so hard to make, just like Gangs of New York. But like now, like I think like Apocalypse Now is like, there's Godfather 2, and then it's Apocalypse Now in terms of uh, Francis Ford Coppola movies. I think it's a really good movie. I don't think, maybe not a masterpiece, but it's really good.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
The huge cinematic feat.
Yeah, if you're a Scorsese fan, if you're a movie fan, it's required reading. You got to check it out. You got to see, you got to get the characters down just for the sense of like, this was the Daniel Day-Lewis coming out party. You're like, all right, this guy's going to be in our lives from here on out. So,
and it's an important movie insofar as like it was the beginning of the Leo Martin Scorsese sort of collaboration, and now it's like it. I don't think it. I think Robert De Niro has more collaborations with Scorsese, but like Leo must have like maybe like one or two. He's behind it by one or two movies, if even.
He's on the team. He's on the All-Star team.
Yeah, he's on the All-Star team.
That was Opening Scenes, Gangs of New York. Hey, Adrian, help yourself to some meat on the way out.
Oh, okay. No. Is it pork or steak?
Gangs of New York. Thanks, Adrian.
See you guys.
Okay, that is it. That is the episode. That is Opening Scenes, our final installment. That was Gangs of New York, the Scorsese, New York, Daniel Day-Lewis, extremely dusty, muddy, snowy movie. When was the first time you saw this movie? What did you think? Were you scared to death of Daniel Day-Lewis? Bill the Butcher? Oh, you might still have nightmares. I want to thank everyone who listened to the episode. I want to thank our new subscribers. And if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please do so because more stuff is going up. Not to mention, thank you, Cousin Adrian. We did 4 Opening Scenes YouTube shows. They are all up there. And this was our finale of the segment of the series. I thought it went great. We're going to be adding some details. We're going to be kicking around some ideas for future shows too. So stay in touch. Thank you everyone for listening. This was Patrick Ramirez and Adrian Ramirez on Opening Scenes on the Running It Back Network. I will see you soon.